Let's run through 3 of the least surprising things that have already happened this week. Stephen Miller throwing a tantrum over people citing the Constitution, Greg Abbott raging about cheating and still coming up short with a loss, and more ugly stories surfacing about misconduct and abuse tied to none other than ICE. None of this is shocking. It's not even new. It's the same pattern, different headlines, different people who built their power on fear, getting angry when somebody shines a light on the rules, the results, or the reality. And speaking of that, who's going to tell Stephen Little Bitch Miller that this is the law passed down from our founding fathers to ensure that our military upholds its oath to the Constitution, not to a king, and that civil resistance is not a coup or an insurrection? But you know what was an insurrection? January 6th. And Stephen Little Bitch Miller should know this because he was the literal driving force behind the purge of the FBI agents who had investigated Donald Trump following the coup he inspired. It's a soldier's duty to disobey an unlawful order. Stephen Little Bitch Miller should know this, which brings me to this clip.
It is insurrection, plainly, directly, without question. And when you have one of the lawmakers on that video being unable to state in, as you say, lengthy cross-examination, a single so-called illegal order, it just proves the point. It's a general call for rebellion from the CIA and the armed services of the United States by Democrat lawmakers, saying that you have not only the right but the duty and the obligation to defy orders of the commander-in-chief, that those who carry weapons in America's name should defy their chain of command and engage in open acts of insurrection, that the CIA, the clandestine service, which isn't even legally authorized to operate in the United States, should engage in, again, acts of rebellion and insurrection. These lawmakers should honestly resign in disgrace and never return to public office again for even daring to think, let alone to say these words and to say them proudly.
Stephen Miller is calling for the arrest of lawmakers who reminded service members that illegal orders still exist. These lawmakers are military veterans who made a video explaining something very basic. Soldiers swear their oath to the Constitution, not to Donald Trump. And under military law, they are required to refuse unlawful orders. Miller called this insurrection and demanded they resign in disgrace because they publicly stated what the law literally says. What's especially twisted is the logic he's using here. In Miller's world, reminding soldiers that illegal orders still exist is more dangerous than actually giving illegal orders. Citing military law becomes rebellion, while blind obedience is treated as some sort of stability thing. The executive branch's messaging is pretty clear. The problem isn't about unlawful power. They want anyone brave enough who points out that this limit exists to get gone. History is very clear about how this works. The people we honor are the ones who refused unlawful or immoral orders, not just the ones who hid behind, we're just doing our job, we're following orders. After World War II, the Nuremberg trials established that I was just obeying orders is not a sufficient enough defense for crimes. Soldiers and officials who resisted Nazi directives, even quietly, are remembered as courageous because they were. The ones who carried out these crimes are remembered as cowards at best and criminals. In reality, the same pattern shows up again and again. During the Vietnam War, U.S. soldiers who were exposed to the My Lai massacre weren't traitors. We now see them as the people who were the heroes who tried to stop these wrongdoings. Military officers who later spoke out about the torture at the CIA or black sites weren't undermining America. They were trying to protect it. The people who just go along with illegal or immoral activities always think that they're being loyal in the moment, but history never agrees with that. That's complicit. That's what makes Miller's position so backwards. The man who is afraid of sidewalk chalk. He would rather criminalize talking about the law than risk anyone actually checking power. He'd rather arrest lawmakers than allow soldiers to remember that they work for the Constitution, not his little ego. It's not about protecting the military here. Stephen Miller just wants unchecked power, and he wants free range and authority and not to be questioned. And here's the part that Stephen Little Bitch Miller doesn't understand or doesn't care about. History doesn't remember people who protected power. It remembers people who protected principle. It remembers the ones who said no. The cowards who went along with the wrongdoings are never the heroes of the story. They're the villains, or they're the warning. They're not remembered for their loyalty and just doing their job, but for their lack of spine. Miller can shout about insurrection all he wants, but the long arc of history is brutal to the people who confuse obedience with honor and power with legitimacy. And then we have Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott is mad because he pushed out a new congressional map that would give Republicans in Texas more seats because Trump told him to do so. Because Trump knows that the GOP is losing grip and they cannot win without cheating. But then a federal judge blocked it, saying it was illegally drawn. And Abbott responded by doing what MAGA does, trashing the judge rather than acknowledging the role he played in this very messy mess.
The judge who issued the opinion was overturned by a Fifth Circuit en banc court last year for his most recent decision in redistricting, and he got it wrong then. He got this one wrong now. And look at the senior judge who presided over this matter in this redistricting case, a three-judge panel. The senior judge took that judge to task, the judge who wrote the opinion, and eviscerated him in more than a 100-page opinion. I've never seen language so harsh by one federal judge against another federal judge, and I feel confident the United States Supreme Court is going to agree with that senior judge from the Fifth Circuit that this decision was a gross misjudgment.
This is the reality. Texas broke from the normal process and redrew their maps mid-decade in an obvious power grab. Abbott says he was just following federal law, but critics say the map was sloppy and unconstitutional. Or like I said in my Trump Halloween video, some of the best rigging I've ever seen, districts shaped like eagles. But now he's banking on the Supreme Court to reverse the lower court and side with him. Anything for Trump. And it cannot be understated how much Greg Abbott truly sucks. The man turned off a power grid during a winter storm, went on to blame windmills, and then went on television while 200 people froze to death in their homes in Texas. He made it illegal for cities to require water breaks for construction workers in 100-degree heat. He banned local governments from enforcing their own regulations and then said he supports local control. The man has never met a problem he couldn't make worse while blaming somebody else for it. And I need to list a few more reasons why he sucks because I'm not done yet. He spent $148 million on a border wall that immediately failed and fell into the Rio Grande. He blocked every climate initiative and then filed for federal disaster relief after the fourth consecutive once-in-a-century flood. He prevented cities from reducing police budgets, then cut their authority to enforce anything else. He signed bills banning books about the existence of certain people, then spoke at length about freedom. You can't keep the lights on or keep the story straight. He sure loves state power, except when cities try to use it. And then, in the least surprising news of all time, an ICE officer got caught in a sex trafficking sting.
This one shames. This is a tragedy in many respects, but people at the Department of Homeland Security, I know there are great people there that come to work every single day and do their jobs and do it admirably. Unfortunately, Mr. recently married back here is not one of those people. He works for ICE, and he is an auditor for them, a civilian employee. When he was arrested, he said, "I'm ICE boys." Well, you know, unfortunately for him, we locked him up, we put him in our jail. He got reappropriated to our jail, and my understanding is he helped send people to send federal authorities. I think he's going to see some federal authorities because I think the feds are going to take this case.
Okay, so who besides me and every single person I know could have guessed that giving people masks, weapons, minimal oversight, implied immunity, and a job built on terrorizing the most vulnerable people in our communities might just attract the exact type of person who shouldn't be anywhere near vulnerable people? Oh, an ICE officer being a total predator? You don't say. Color me shocked. It, really reminds me of when I used to watch To Catch a Predator back in the day, and some guy would roll up to catch the predator at an elementary school playground, and the predator would go, "I don't know why I'm here," while literally standing at the merry-go-round with his hands in his pants. It's the same exact vibe. And so, unfortunately, this was not To Catch a Predator. This was just another day in American law enforcement functioning as they've always done. With this all part of a 3-day police sting called, I shit you not, Operation Creep, which is just, if nothing else, it's really strong branding. Police pretended to be offering access to a 17-year-old girl and just walked up to see who showed up. And surprise, 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 people showed up. And of course, one of them was an ICE employee who, according to reports, announced, "I'm ICE, boys," when he got arrested. What a strategy. Fortunately, this time it didn't work. 16 guys total, ages 18 to 49. Nice wide demographic of predators. One guy brought cocaine, meth, and 8 guns, like he was packing for a weekend trip. Another told police he'd be arriving with a gun, and he was just tackled on site. The guy was immediately placed on administrative leave, which is always the most reassuring sentence in any scandal. Just give him a paid vacation. And honestly, if you think this is as messed up as it looks, go ahead and share this video. Share it with your friends, post it on Facebook, Twitter, wherever, and subscribe. I cannot grow without your support, and we need to get this type of messaging out there by all means necessary. This is nuts. Abolish ICE, keep your pee in your pants, and stay off of fucking playgrounds. Predators. Goodbye.